We all may have noticed that we're down about a few people, and as we've been doing here at Margaret Street since the late 80s, we have a sizable portion of our congregation that is at the Lads Leaders Convention. I'll tell you, at times we've had as many as 130 people go. Does anybody know roughly the number that went this time? No, not quite 200. 80, 90. So anyway, if I had to guess, I'd say 80 or 90 folks, including the kids, and they've done very well. Richard's going to give a little report. I was reading the Gospel Advocate this week, and they have an article on Lads to Leaders, and it kind of inspired me for the class this morning. See, with everybody gone, it was up to elders to cover the Sunday morning class. We have others doing the sermons and such. So I just thought it might be a good time to spend some time talking about Lads to Leaders itself. Richard's going to speak a little bit about the history of Lads to Leaders in general, and specifically the events and perhaps some of our results. That's John to be prepared to make some comments. I want to talk a little bit about the history of Lads to Leaders here at Margaret Street. We want to save about 15 or 20 minutes to talk about the value of Lads to Leaders itself. And we have an expert with us, Brother Myers. Appreciate him being here. So I'm looking for some comments out of you, sir. David was with us for 20 years, and it was right in the heart of when Margaret Street really got rolling with Lads to Leaders. So I don't know, but I would guess that there are probably 2,000 to 3,000 actual participants in Atlanta that competed this weekend. I know that when Margaret Street was up there, it was approaching 5,000 people, and we were actually asked to go to Orlando because we have such a strong commitment to Lads to Leaders, and they thought, and the leadership in Lads to Leaders thought it would be helpful if we would participate down there to help get that going. But it involves basically two kinds of categories. There's competition that we're all familiar with, teams and individually, Bible Bowl, puppets, song leading, speeches, stuff like that, where the success is a result of preparation, hard work, quality coaching. There's also non-competition events. And reading the Lads Leaders site, they pointed out that about 70% of the work is non-competition events. Kind of surprised me a little bit, but there's many things that people do when they complete them, they get recognized for that. For example, memorizing 100 scriptures. You know, I don't know how many kids we have that have memorized 100 scriptures. Good Samaritan work. Many events like that that's not involving competition, but it involves hard work and completing things. We do well. We figured it out pretty early. I remember going to Nashville in the late 80s. That's when we got started, and I think the Hutchersons got us started, and we didn't do anything. And it was pretty disappointing that whatever it took to be successful at Lads to Leaders, we didn't have it figured out. But within 3 or 4 years, we did, and we began to excel in some areas. I would say it's fair to say that Margaret Street has a reputation for Bible Bowl and for participation. I was in Locklin about a month ago and talking to somebody who knew some of our kids, and I just mentioned that Margaret Street does participate in Lads Leaders because that's how they got to know each other. And the lady I was talking to almost kind of snorted and said, "Participate? I wouldn't call it that." I mean, it's just recognize that we do well and we're heavily involved. Let me ask this. How many here in this auditorium have either been to convention or been a coach or have had children or grandchildren that have participated in Lads to Leaders? Just raise your hands. That's a good showing. I'll tell you, I'm here today because Sherry and I decided that it was important for one of us to be here for the funeral yesterday. I don't regret it, although I do miss not being there this weekend. Just to cover a little bit more about Margaret Street's involvement in Lads to Leaders, we were at Nashville for several years, which is where it started. It was the first convention. Then they started a new convention in Atlanta because it was just too many for Nashville to handle. We participated in that. As I mentioned, we went to Orlando, and now for a couple of reasons, we've gone back to Atlanta, which is a very stiff competition area. We've been at it almost 30 years. I think in 1 year we took 130 people, and that was pretty impressive. We've had a number of directors. I'm going to mention some of them because it takes leadership. Besides, David and Gina have done a great job, and they've been doing it for several years. I think the Hutchinsons led us at one time. Greg Folk did it for a number of years. I know that Richard and Ruth ran it for several years. I know that myself and Glenn Todd, me and Sherry and Glenn Todd did it 1 or 2 years, and that probably was the least level of leadership we had in that whole process. Have I missed anybody? David, do you think of anybody that was running the show but that haven't, that I'm... Probably, kind of yeah, probably. We put it on our youth minister some. Yeah, okay, Tim and Linda Mann. So what, the point is there have been a lot of people that have been directors of this over the years. We have done well. I've read a little bit about the success. I can't wait to hear more about it. So what I'd like to do is just spend a moment, let Richard kind of take over. He's going to talk about Lads Leaders history itself. Anybody else want to make some observations? I want to save 15 or 20 minutes at the end just to talk about the value of Lads Leaders. So you're up. Richard, you want this? All right.
Get real loud.
Okay, we got 15 minutes. I have to tell you that when I read this article, it challenged me because I had fallen into it many times, and now this whole problem with not being able to see the forest for the trees. And I say that, I think, see all the hard work, I see the individual things that are done, and it's easy to forget the big picture of Lad's leaders. So I want to spend a few moments just talking about the kind of things that Lad's leaders can bring to the table for Margaret Street. And many of us heard this statistic, and it is based on facts, that children that participate in the Lad's Leaders program, there is a greater chance that they're going to remain faithful throughout their life. It is a correlation. It is a statistic. It's not the only important factor, and it's not a guarantee, but this is the result of statistics. So if nothing else, we would want to participate because we want the future of the church to be secure. We want our children to be faithful. Let me just ask, I'd like to get some comments from the people here in this class. Is there anything else that you can think of that would be a strong motivation for this congregation to continue to devote this much time and effort in this process? And maybe now's a good time for you, David. And this is David Myers. He was our preacher for 20 years. He was here when we started. His children participated. I know that we had a team, I think, from 3rd grade through 12th grade run first place every year. And it consisted of David's child, one of my children, Webster child, Turner child, and these girls, if they missed one question out of 100, they beat themselves up. That's just one example. Thoughts, Dave? Let me add something about competition. let's just be honest. Competition is a part of our DNA. It is. It's part of children's DNA. They compete. You're not going to get rid of it. So recognizing what it is, people are going to compete. One extra thing about competition is perhaps this is a way for kids to learn how to compete with integrity and humility. Recognizing sometimes that you will not win, you will lose, and how to deal with adversity and how to deal with success. And let's just be honest, it motivates people. That's just the way it is. It's a child. We have parents and grandparents in this congregation, parents with little children who can't participate yet. Why would we want to spend this kind of effort, and it's a lot of work, to be engaged in this process? Let me just focus you on one thing, leadership skills. Just give me some thoughts, someone, about life skills and leadership skills that may be wrapped up in the Lads Leaders process. Has anybody ever been afraid to get in front of someone like this and speak? That is part of why Ladders Leaders got started, so that Jack Zorn could train men to not be afraid to get in front of people. And let me tell you, nobody's been more afraid to get in front of people than me in my earlier years. Nobody. So Richard was going to add, so I remember this is my bad side, so you have to holler. I was third grade, wasn't it?
Third grade? Yeah. Brian Myers got, just deathly ill. That's supposed to flu or something. But anyway, he was just sick as a dog. And these kids prepared so hard. And they place first every year. These kids, they just did the test. They just blew the top out of the test. So Brian was deathly ill. He thought, we're done. He was not able to compete. So Brian literally allowed him to lay down. He was so
I can see that right now as we sit here, the little child lifting his card. Yep.
Yeah. Laid on the pillow and just kind of had to do this, and they place first. But for Ryan, I mean, literally coming out all the drag out his neck almost because he didn't want to let his teammates down. And it's just those are just wonderful stories and helping that just
So. We're almost out of time. I'm going to mention 3 or 4 or 5 things, and we got another minute or two. May have some. Are you raising your hand, Andrea? She's twiddling her hair. Okay. So let me just. I went through this, thinking this through as well as that article. It's an opportunity for mentorship and unity building in the congregation. Youth go to groups, they do things together, and they develop relationships between themselves and their group. This is an opportunity for this church to mentor these kids and develop cross-generational relationships. And if you don't think that happens, you are mistaken for those that are involved. Being mentors is biblical. It develops a servant spirit development, this good Samaritan and practicing doing things for others. Obviously, Bible Bowl. Now, there's one thing just to memorize facts, but you need to connect the dots, and I think that does happen, and we need to spend more time on that. But memorizing verses and knowing the Bible is the beginning. We talk about leadership skills, being in front of people, knowing how to do this. You know, we're spending Sunday morning studying about getting elders. Now, what if we had men that actually qualified in some areas but just could not see themselves being an elder because of lack of experience? This is a way to get our people ready for that. The whole argument about teamwork, to the extent that there is value in knowing how to be a part of a team and knowing it takes a village, doing these team competitions is it. Now, I don't know how important it is for a kid to be a part of a football team and how that's going to make him successful in life, but to the extent there is value in that, it's part of it. We have an emphasis in this congregation on commitment, keeping your commitment, being on time, and understanding deadlines. And life is about that. And we've had a couple of, some would consider harsh results, people not being able to participate because they fooled around or didn't get it done in time, but learning how important that is will prepare you for life. Also preparing and hard work. None of these kids are successful because they just show up. The success is directly related to the hard work they get and quality coaching. And it's not just, you know, you can spin your wheels, but it's quality effort. And that's provided by the adults. Defending the faith. Those are things that, as I thought about this, I can't even imagine a better process for a congregation to be involved in if it were involved. And frankly, more of us need to be up there in Atlanta watching these kids. I can't, it was a sacrifice for me to be here. It ought to be a sacrifice for each of us. We go watch our kids graduate, play ball. Why do we do that? Is that important to the kids? If it wasn't, or us, we wouldn't be there. It is important to them. Did you think enough of them to go watch them complete their results, be recognized for their effort? I think it's just as important here as anything else. You think of all the time our kids spend in secular activities. It's incredible what people do. And some of that time should be spent on this. Anyway, got that off my chest. We got a couple minutes. Anybody want to make a follow-up comment? Roger? Absolutely. We get more preachers because of the Lads Leaders program. Justin, did you want to say something? Lads to Leaders is hard work. Congregations choose not to be involved because of all the work. It's a mistake. It's worth the effort. It's 9:45. Let's prepare for worship. John? There you go. Appreciate your time.